This is Connemara Farm, Flat Rock, North Carolina, near Asheville. It is the home of a very considerable American to whom most of us are beholden, Carl Sandburg, poet, philosopher, historian, and biographer. It is a home that is spacious. It has room for people, for children, for walking sticks, for goats, and particularly for books. Books upstairs, downstairs, on the stairways, in the attic, in the basement. Everywhere, books. And here we have 2 rows of books, 2 shelves, one for his granddaughter, Paula, and another for his grandson, John. 24 volumes, the output of 76 years. Abraham Lincoln, The Prairie Years. Abraham Lincoln, The War Years, 4 volumes. Mary Lincoln, Wife and Widow. The Complete Poems of Carl Sandburg. Remembrance Rock. Always the Young Strangers. Chicago Poems. The People, Yes. The Rutabaga Stories. The American Song Bag. 24 volumes. And no one knows, not even Sandburg, how many contributions to magazines and learned periodicals. Just the other day, we were walking outside, chatting with him about why he chose to settle in Flat Rock. Carl, it's up here on this rock, isn't it, where you wrote part of Always the Young Strangers?
Yes. I wrote thousands of words with a lead pencil there, and my daughter Helga transcribed them. But on Lincoln, I couldn't bring the materials that I need to consult from time to time. I couldn't bring them up here, so...
You wrote most of that in the house?
Yes.
Well, perhaps you'll show us your workroom in the house a little later.
It's a dizzy corner. Kind of a crazy corner. Because I don't pretend it's organized.
Mm-hmm.
I don't pretend it's organized.
How old were you when you scored your first literary success?
I was 38 when Chicago Poems was published. That was my first book by a regular publishing house.
The memory of those early years, the struggles of a writer to achieve recognition, those years were shared by Mrs. Sandburg. In her modest, gracious way, she tells of her part in helping her husband gain success as a poet.
Carl wrote for a long time before he really achieved proper recognition, didn't he?
Oh, yes. He wrote for 20 years at least, and he wrote, he worked through the nights with no prospect, really, of having his poetry ever published. We all, at that time, it was poetry he was writing. And we always looked forward to saving enough money to get a book printed, because I used to send his poems away to magazines. They always came back. We had a regular circular of them to which we'd send them, and they'd come back. And then finally the time came when he got recognition by in poetry, that magazine about poetry in Chicago, and then the publisher saw that, and then he became recognized. But he worked just as hard before. Somehow he works for himself, for his own ideal, and he never considers anything else but what he personally would consider a good book.
He works for himself, for his own ideal. And how does he shape his work? How does a writer create a style?
Carl, tell me, why do you dislike adjectives?
I'm sure it didn't come out of an experience I had at West Point.
What was that?
At West Point, for a while there, I was a classmate of Douglas MacArthur and Ulysses S. Grant III. I was a classmate of theirs for 2 weeks. I was notified by the superintendent that I had failed in arithmetic. I might have expected that. But grammar. I probably failed to remember the definition I had read of a verb. And I don't know, I might have gotten a hate of adjectives then.
What do you think is the worst word in the English language?
The one word more detestable than any other in the English language is the word exclamation. exclusive, exclusive. When you're exclusive, you shut out a more or less large range of humanity from your mind and heart, from your understanding them.
What do you answer when people ask you how you write, how you go about the business of writing?
Much depends on who is asking the question. Sweet young things that will ask that question, how do you write? And I say, simple, it's easy. You just sit up to the typewriter and you put down one word after another. If you try to put down 2 or 3 words, you're sunk. And they take that as very valuable advice.
Carl, I think you said once that an author must write what he thinks, and a poet must write what he must. Is that right?
That'll go for different kinds of writers. It will go for, a good many of the best poets. There is being written today a lot of cerebral poetry, poetry out of the brain, with nothing of the blood in it. And it's rather pathetic. You need footnotes and you need diagrams. Or there are readers of it that say, oh, I understand it. And then there are those who are honest enough to say they don't understand such poems. And then there are still others that have had it explained to them. And they say to those who told them, those who explained it, I understood it until you explained it to me.
Carl, a great many people speak frequently of the people, yes. I've marked a couple of passages here, and I wonder if you'd read them for us.
I think we can get around to that. All right. I'll try. The people will live on. The learning and blundering people will live on. They will be tricked and sold and again sold and go back to the nourishing earth or root holes. The people so peculiar in renewal and comeback. You can't laugh off their capacity to take it. The mammoth rests between his cyclonic dramas. The steel mill sky is alive. The fire breaks white and zigzag, shot on a gunmetal gloaming. Man is a long time coming. Man will yet win. Brother may yet line up with brother. This old anvil, the people, yes, laughs at many broken hammers. There are men who can't be bought. There are women beyond purchase. The fireborn are at home in fire. The stars make no noise. You can't hinder the wind from blowing. Time is a great teacher. Who can live without hope? In the darkness, with a great bundle of grief, the people march. In the night, and overhead, a shovel of stars for keeps. The people march. Where to? What next? Where to? What next? What next?
Would you rather be remembered as a poet, a biographer, a historian, or what?
I'd rather be known as a man who says, what I need mainly is 3 things in life, possibly 4. To be out of jail, to eat regular, to get what I write printed, and then a little love at home and a little outside. Those 4 things, and I don't need to be called either poet, historian, biographer, guitar player, folk singer, minne-singer, and what there was one novelist.
Well, now, Carl,
Novelist.
you have got all four of those things, right?
In a way of speaking.
You know more of our past than I think anyone I know. And do you feel that we're in danger of tearing ourselves apart?
There never has been a time that there were not clouds on the horizon for this country, and there was one crisis after another that can be named. In the colonial times, in the American Revolution, and that Civil War, the like of which almost no other country has ever had. And then the two world wars, over and over again, it has looked as though we were sunk as a nation. And always, it's the point I try to make in that novel, Remembrance Rock, always there has been a saving remnant. Always there has been enough of a small, faithful minority, faithful to the death.
In his epic novel, Remembrance Rock, Mr. Sandburg interprets for us his deep faith in America and in the people who shaped what is sometimes called the American dream. Listen as Mr. Sandburg reads selected passages from Remembrance Rock.
When we say a patriot is one who loves his country, what kind of love do we mean? A love we can throw on a scale and see how much it weighs, a love we can take apart to see how it ticks, a love where, with a yardstick, we record how long, how high, how wide it is. Or is a patriot's love of country a thing invisible, a quality, a human shade and breath, beyond all reckoning and measurement? These are questions old as the time of man, and the answers we know in part only. For we know when a nation goes down and never comes back, when a society or a civilization perishes, one condition may always be found. They forgot where they came from. They lost sight of what brought them along. The hard beginnings were forgotten, and the struggles farther along. They became satisfied with themselves. Unity and common understanding there had been, enough to overcome rot and dissolution, enough to break through their obstacles. But the mockers came, and the deniers were heard, and vision and hope faded, and the custom of greeting became, what's the use? And men whose forefathers would go anywhere, holding nothing impossible in the genius of man, joined the mockers and deniers. They forgot where they came from. They lost sight of what had brought them along. The call to hardship, toil, and combat runs like a blood-scarlet thread over and through the story of the American people. It has cost to build this nation. Living men in struggle and risk, in self-denial and pain, in familiarity with sacrifice, wounds, and death. Those living men of the past paid the cost. They ought not to be forgotten. The dead who held in their clenched hands that which became the heritage of us, the living.